really indicate to us? I mean, it was definitely in material breach of the UN resolution, but did it really indicate that this was someone who'd had a change of heart?
I think that the issue, though, that was now developing in the Security Council was that Dr. Blix did indeed seem to think more weeks and months would be helpful. And because nothing had been found so far in the inspections process, other than the Al-Samud missiles, which were being dealt with, that confirmed the intelligence picture that had been presented over the previous months, that people did feel there was a need for more time. It wasn't an unreasonable request. So was there a risk that by putting down the second resolution at this point, that it appeared as if you were trying to curtail this process because of the demands of the military planning?
It was more actually, so Lawrence, the other way around. What we were trying to do was to say, how do you resolve what on any basis is a somewhat indistinct picture being painted by Blix? Because it's clear they are not cooperating fully, but they're giving a little bit of cooperation. I come back to the fact, of course, the only cooperation that was being given was because of this huge military force sitting on Saddam's doorstep. What I tried to do was to find a way, and that's why I did this with Blix himself. I mean, we sat down and we had a conversation. I think actually we had a long conversation on the phone. I remember Jack Straw was very much involved in this. We were, Jeremy Greenstock, I think, at the UN was very much involved in this. We tried to construct these tests, and the most important one to me was this ability to get the scientists out of the country.
And it seems to me that the issue, and indeed this was a very serious effort, but you didn't have the time, because if you were going to do that, maybe it would have taken until April, maybe until May, but the sense within the Security Council was that this was indeed a way that could go forward, but that the view of the United States is that you couldn't have much more time. Jonathan Powell told us that you asked for more time and you weren't given it.
The reason for constructing the resolution was to try and get us into the situation of having more time. The problem, however, was this. I mean, we could have got the resolution together. You know, I was having discussions late into the night every evening with, I think it was the Chileans and the Mexicans, and I was speaking to the French, and we were speaking to everybody. We were trying desperately to get this last route out. And there were other things that were being talked about at the time. I had I'm going into the details of it, but there was a group of Arab countries that came to us, and they were quite keen, I think, on actually, if we got a fresh resolution, pushing Saddam out. So there were ways, even then, where we could have tried to resolve this. The problem was, it became very clear that whatever their position had been in November 2002, the position, particularly of France and Russia, had really changed. They had decided they weren't going to agree any new resolution that had in it any authority for action if Saddam didn't comply. And the reason why that then made our position very difficult was that if you tabled another resolution, but said even if he doesn't comply with that resolution, we'll come back and have yet another discussion.
I think we probably want to explore that particular question after lunch in terms of whether the French were the absolute block on getting something. But I just want, because time now is pressing, and I think we've done quite a lot on this. Let me just sum up where it seems to me that we are as sort of February's turning into March. First, Sir Jeremy Greenstock has told us through this time he never felt that he was close to having 9 positive votes in the back. We had some at one point, some at another, but we never really lined them all up together, which would have put the pressure on the French and the Russians. Despite the quality of our intelligence passed to UNRWA, there hasn't been a smoking gun. There hasn't been a real find of chemical or biological stocks. perhaps for reasons that have nothing to do with whether it's there or not, but it hasn't been found. The inspectors were not saying that they couldn't do their job. They were, and Al-Baradei was saying that his job was almost done and that there was no nuclear program. So the view was moving away on this issue within the Security Council. Was this not a good time to take stock and to question whether or not more time would have been helpful? And again, just to quote the evidence we've had from Sir David Manning and from Sir Jeremy Greenstock, both of whom have come to this conclusion: it would have been good to have more time.
And that's why we tried to construct this arrangement in order to get us some more time. I think I would make 2 points, however. First of all, I think we would have got the 9 votes were it not for the fact that those members in the middle group, I think they were called the undecided 6 at a certain point, they were getting such a clear and vehement message from France and Russia that they weren't going to accept any resolution that was an authority for action. That's really what disintegrated that possibility. The second thing is, though, even if we'd got more time, Hans Blix would never have been able to conduct the interviews with the key members of the regime, and they be honest with him.
But if he'd been given the chance and failed again, wouldn't you then have had more of a chance of having the Security Council behind you, which had been one of your objectives going back to 2002?
Well, I'm not really sure about that, you know, as long as, I mean, by then we'd been 4 months with Saddam. And, you know, you can take different views of the Blix reports, and Hans Blix obviously takes a certain view now. I have to say, in my conversations with him then, it was a little different. But you have to make a judgment. Is this person really seriously cooperating with the international community or not?
Final.
And as we now know, incidentally, he wasn't. And I do emphasize also the fact that he, and there's also evidence in the Iraq Survey Group, which is actually quite important about what Iraqi scientists were being told by the vice president of Iraq. He gathered them all together as the inspectors went in. And as you know, the inspectors were supposed to be given all the information, any materials they had. And what he was saying to them was, if you have any materials in your possession, you better not have. Now,
I understand. You're right. This is indeed what happened. The question is whether or not it would be possible to create the consensus that would have been so much help behind you in the United Nations. Just my final question. Did you ask President Bush for more time, and did he say, no, the military action has got to go ahead on 19th of March?
No, what he actually did, much to the consternation of his system, was he said, OK, if you can get this new resolution down with the tests that I can, because I constructed them with Blix. So I thought, well, look, here you are, you're constructing these tests with the UN inspector. So I thought that would give them a certain persuasive quality, obviously, with the other members of the Security Council. And what President Bush actually said to me was, if you can get that, do it. But, you know, you've got to understand from the American perspective, they'd gone down the 1441 route. He obviously wasn't cooperating. We've been through the 8th of December declaration. We then went through the January report, the February report, and they had their forces down there ready to take action. It was a difficult situation. Yeah, so but actually he did, to be fair, say if you can put it together, put it together.
But he wanted to get on with it.
Well, I think there was a judgment being made, and I honestly, in retrospect, can't disagree with this judgment, that, you know, more time was not going to solve this.
Thank you.
It's clearly time to break for lunch. Can I just say I'd like to thank everyone in the room who sat through this morning. And as you won't be able to be here in this room for this afternoon, thank you for your very attentive and, well, if I may say so, mannered response to this session. I thank our witness, and we will resume again at 2 o'clock.
You're watching Sky News. We are live outside the Iraq inquiry. The former Prime Minister Tony Blair is the key witness today. He's got one real question to answer about the Iraq war, and that is why. He has been certainly quite defiant so far today. He's got 6 hours to answer the question. We've heard the morning session breaking for lunch now and resuming again at 2 o'clock. Our Foreign Affairs editor Tim Marshall has been monitoring events for us. How do you think he's done?
He did what we said he would do this morning. I called him the Zen master of the Iraq inquiry. He deflected away and took the path of least resistance. Not entirely his fault, because he was hardly asked the hard, direct questions. And I think what we've learned is that yet again the Chilcot Inquiry will ask the opening question, get the answer which isn't quite what they were asking, and then they will move on to a different subject. And that has been the story of the inquiry. Everything that was said this morning was already in the public domain. The Resolution 1441, the Chicago speech that Mr. Blair made in 1999, setting out his grounds for intervention, all in the public domain. So I don't think they got very far. What I thought you got as a glimmer of when their final report comes out, it'll come to 396 pages, that'll just be the annex, but it can be probably summed up already in one paragraph. Some people thought this was legal, some people thought it wasn't legal. Maybe we should talk a little bit more before we go to war in the future, because they're not a court of inquiry. On 1441, it's worth summing up Mr. Blair's position that he felt that 1441 was a Chapter 7 resolution, and that is backed up by force through the United Nations. That as 1441 said in paragraph 1, Iraq is in material breach of previous resolutions. Paragraph 3 now says it's got 30 days to come clean. If it does not come clean in paragraph 5, it says it will be in further material breach. It is very easy to then say that is my legality for going to war, and that's the position he took. What they didn't ask him was, can you explain why the French were telling you, and the Russians were telling you, and the Chinese were telling you, and from memory the Chileans and the Mexicans in the Security Council, we've got the same resolution in front of us, we've seen that same information, we don't agree that it's legal, and they never went anywhere near that.
I want to talk to you about something else he said. Well, let's just share it with our viewers, remind them what he said a little bit earlier on today. He was talking about 9/11 and 3,000 people, more than 3,000 people died that day. As you well remember, you probably were watching Sky News at the time, and the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, said that is when everything changed for him.
Up to September the 11th, we thought he was a risk, but we thought it was worth trying to contain it. The crucial thing after September the 11th is that the calculus of risk changed.
Our political editor, Adam Bolton, has been monitoring events as well for us throughout the morning. How do you think he's done so far today, Adam?
Well, I have to say I do disagree with Tim on this. I think that was, from the point of view of the move to war, the key session, and I think some of the key questions were asked about the dossier, although I'm surprised that the Prime Minister wasn't asked whether he felt that he had, albeit unwittingly, deceived Parliament. But remember, on that 45-minute claim, the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, conceded today that he didn't pay enough close attention to the way the claim was presented, even although it was in the document and in his statement to Parliament on the day or when that document was published. Secondly, on the question of were you justified in saying the evidence was beyond doubt, he conceded that the intelligence was wrong, but at the time he said, I did believe it, and I also believed that it was beyond doubt, and he suggested, and I think many people will dispute this, that had he said in so many words that it was clear that this evidence, that would be the same as saying it was beyond doubt. And he was questioned on that by Lawrence Freedman, who then said, beyond your doubt or anybody's doubt. And at that point, Tony Blair then backed off and said, well, actually, on balance, and I said this to the Butler inquiry, I think it would have been better if the evidence had been presented without a political gloss, without an introduction. Well, of course, that wasn't what happened. He did present it with a political gloss, with an introduction, and he did say that the evidence was beyond doubt. And also then put to him a question which Alistair Campbell and Jonathan Powell couldn't answer earlier on. You said that the threat was growing in your statement to Parliament. Where was your evidence for that? And again, we heard Tony Blair's defence, that a Joint Intelligence Committee report saying that the programme was continuing, he said, was the basis as it was growing. And he also cited some intelligence which he admitted was wrong about mobile weapons manufacturing manufacturing facilities. And he then went on, Kay, and he said, it's a judgment you have to take. I wasn't prepared to take the risk of Saddam Hussein rearming, and that if you asked, as he said it, the 2010 question, if there hadn't have been an intervention, then he believes Saddam Hussein would have posed a threat like Iran, which the rest of the world would have found it very difficult to deal with. He also is claiming that his role in pursuing a second United Nations resolution was not to get a green light for action, but actually to delay and to give further time for consideration of the evidence. And he's saying that Hans Blix, who sometimes he called Blix, sometimes he called Hans, was effectively confused, and that at no point was Blix in a position to say that there was full and unconditional cooperation, and that therefore, Blair says, it's clear that there was a breach of UN resolutions. And that, I think, is the point, that as far as this UN case goes, we're not really advancing, that there was a deliberately ambiguous 1441 resolution agreed, precisely because people could say it meant different things. And then subsequently there was an argument, and as we've heard so many times before, Mr. Blair is putting the blame at Jacques Chirac's door and Vladimir Putin's door, and he's saying once they said that they weren't really interested in pursuing a diplomatic strategy with consequences, we had to review the situation as it stood. Also interesting, just a side reference to Lord Goldsmith, he said, yeah, I was aware of the legal questions, Peter made sure I was. And I think that does give you some sense of the habit of mind of the Prime Minister, who in all his evidence today at the time has been saying, I was dealing with a risk. Yes, things changed on 9/11. Yes, I felt to act. Now, those people who oppose the war may not like what they've heard, but I think we have heard more clearly, more specifically than ever before, Tony Blair's defence. And that, I think, is significant, with all due respect to Tim.
OK, for now, Adam, thanks very much indeed. An awful lot of demonstrators here today, actually. They were making a lot of noise a bit earlier on. I think some of them might have gone for their lunch as well now. Give you an idea, writers, musicians, relatives of the dead Iraqi refugees, poets, human rights lawyers, comedians, they've all said that they were going to come along today. Ursula Errington has been down with the crowd throughout the morning for us. And Ursula, who are you talking to at the moment?
OK. Mine's good. Someone's talking to you, Ursula.
Hi. Okay, we'll come back to
I'm
Ursula
here
in just
outside the QE2 Centre with some of the family members and also those who have been queuing in order to get in for this afternoon's session. I'm joined now by Sarah Chapman, whose brother was an airman who died 5 years ago tomorrow. She's been listening intently to the evidence that Tony Blair has been giving all morning. Sarah, what did you make of what he had to say?
Well, very much the Tony Blair show. Discussed at times in his demeanour how he felt the need to push his points forward. And I do think that the inquiry panel are doing a fantastic job. However, I haven't come out of this with any great confidence. I wasn't expecting massive revelations, but it has probably furthered my curiosity about the truth, probably more so now, given the things that he's been saying.
Was there anything in particular that he referenced that you thought was important?
Well, he tried to do about the time, and we talked about people opposed, and we talked about the meetings and maybe how he conducted himself. And certainly there was the meetings at Chequers, and we were like, well, there was no cabinet meetings, and there was the options paper back in March that actually certain members of the cabinet actually didn't get, and those members of the cabinet, one of which was Claire Short, and we know how she opposed, and it just feels that maybe he picked and selected his advisors. And ultimately, one of the things he said, you know, we had a decision to make, but my decision was, to me, that's blatant disregard for anything that he already set his agenda, and it's very clear to us that he's already set his agenda, and it was set a while back.
The questions that you wanted answered, have they been asked?
No, I mean, there aren't really any questions that I think that I could ask, because nothing's going to give me peace. This is just part of history. These words that he says are not going to change the one thing that I want. I'm left, as are many others, dealing with the life sentence that we've been dealt with as a result of his actions. And he can't give me what I want, and that's my brother.
What was the reaction in the family's room where you were?
Initially very intense. Then there was a grumble of discontent, really, that kind of filtered around the room at times. I mean, certainly there was one father that got up and walked out. A few of us are coming out for more breaks the more we kind of going on. We feel a lot of it's being repeated, and it's this kind of disregard as well. One of the family members I know who actually managed to make her way into the actual room, because I'm in the viewing room, has said how painful it is having Tony Blair with his back. And as I said to her, having his back to the families is well, having your back to anybody is a mark of disrespect, and to us he's speaking only for his own intentions, and he's certainly shown disrespect to us.
I know many of you wrote a letter just saying that you wanted 15 minutes of his time. Just briefly, has he responded to that?
No, he keeps running from us. He won't. He's not able to be man enough like our guys were, who are true heroes. He's not man enough to turn around and actually face us in the eye.
Sarah Chapman, thank you very much for your time today. Well, the protests go on here. They are picking up momentum again, and the chanting continues. But for now, back to you.
OK, Ursula, thank you. Michelle Clifford was inside for the morning's hearing for us. The families didn't even see him, and the protesters didn't see him this morning as he arrived, did they?
Not the families, not the protesters, and most of the journalists didn't either. He came very early, we think around 7:30, whisked in through the back door, didn't walk in the front as a lot of people have done and taken the flak. You remember the day that Alistair Campbell was here. Tony Blair didn't do that. Maybe they would argue for security reasons. So the first we all saw of Tony Blair this morning was when he walked into the hearing room. I have to say, these things are subjective in our sort of judgments. He looked like a man who was absolutely dreading it. He looked uncharacteristically nervous and tense, but I think he relaxed into the session. He sort of warmed up. The thing that came across very, very clearly is his absolute conviction that what he did was the right thing. He conceded that a few things could have been done differently, but on the substantive issue of tackling Saddam Hussein, whether Saddam Hussein and his regime presented a threat to the world, particularly after 9/11, he was emphatic. And he said, it was one of his very passionate moments, there were moments when he was waving his arms about. He said, this was not a lie, this was not a deceit, I didn't set out to deceive anybody. This man posed a threat, I did the thing I believed in, and I do the same thing again now.
But we're left in no doubt that that special relationship with America was very strong between him and President Bush.
Oh, without a doubt. And one of the key areas, obviously, that people wanted answers about was that meeting that
in Texas.
Sir Christopher Mayer has suggested that that was the meeting almost a year before the conflict started, where the deal was signed in blood, as he put it. Now, he admitted today that at that meeting they discussed military options. He told George Bush that yes, he would be with America, but he said it wasn't quite the same as saying let's go to war. He wasn't planning war a year ahead. He wanted to go down the UN route, but he was absolutely convinced Saddam was a threat. He wanted to stand side by side with America, and he said, importantly, if it did come to military action, yeah, I told them that we would be with them.
OK, as far as the protesters are concerned, are they likely to see him this evening?
I think it's very unlikely. I have a suspicion that Mr. Blair isn't going to walk out the front door of the building and walk through the crowd. I think we're going to see him whisked away through the back door again.
OK, Michelle, for now, thanks very much indeed. So you're watching Sky News live from the Iraq Inquiry. I think we can show you a picture of some of the demonstrators. Stop the War demonstrators have been here throughout the morning, along with quite a few family members who couldn't get their seats in that ballot to be able to sit inside for the inquiry for the afternoon session. So hopefully, if you stay tuned our way, we'll be able to bring that to you here on Sky News. Expecting that to be around about 2 o'clock this afternoon. They went for lunch a little bit late, but the chairman said, never mind, we want you back at 2 o'clock when the former Prime Minister will be resuming his evidence to the Iraq inquiry and putting out his case as to why we had to go to war. Do stay tuned our way.
I love you. I'm your therapist. I'm not an option. I want to go back there. I want to take a look around. To the site where you dropped the bomb. To the place where the children were killed.
Yes to the pregnancy or no? Tell us what you think.
You want me to give you an answer right now?
Another chance to see the show critics were raving about last year. Take your seat on the couch for In Treatment. Every weeknight at 10 on Sky Arts 1 HD.
A Garnier first. Want to fight blackheads and fade marks? Trust new Pure Active Blackhead Clearing Scrub, our maximum strength formula. Instant deep cleansing helps clear blackheads and fade marks. Immediate action. Results from day one. New Garnier Pure Active Scrub.
Take care.
Garnier.
Hillary's best ever January blind sale ends soon. Don't miss out. Every range is up to half price, including new and best-selling fabrics, whites and creams, and even shutters. That's up to half price, measured, made and fitted just for you. Hurry! Our best ever blind sale ends on the 31st of January. So don't miss out. Book your appointment today on 0800 916 7796 or visit hillarys.co.uk.
Start your World Cup countdown with the Mirror's glossy 32-page magazine. Get excited about the action with our match-by-match guide. Free, only with Saturday's Daily Mirror.
You could earn 35k or more a year.
She's pure as New York snow.
Nice and Easy's blend of subtle tones boosts your confidence. And now it's creating a big stir in hair colouring. 95% of users surveyed would recommend it for beautiful, natural-looking colour. Nice and Easy. Be a shade braver.
This is for those who would rather give it a go than never know. Play Lotto online.
Fisherman's Friend. Never be without a friend.
Tesco Car Insurance. We could help you save money. And if you're a Club Card customer, that could be up to £252. And right now, as a little welcome, you'll earn an extra 1,200 Club Card points. You see, it's our policy to save you money on yours. Every little helps.
We keep evolving to give you the best cleaning we can. And now there's new Ariel with Actilift. It's our best yet. The new Ariel range with Actilift. Brilliant.
Hello, you're watching the Live Desk, live from the Iraq inquiry here in central London. The guest speaker, if you will, the key witness today is the former Prime Minister Tony Blair. They've broken for lunch. When they come back, he'll be telling us about weapons of mass destruction, the relationship with America, and also in more detail about the exit strategy from Iraq. All that to come in just a moment for you after the weather with Lisa.
Over the Sea of Japan, as cool conditions persist, you'll find something to whet your appetite.
Hello. Through the course of this afternoon, it's going to remain cold. We've got a very strong northerly airflow, snow showers through the Highlands and the Grampians, and by dawn tomorrow, we might see 10 to 20 centimetres of snow accumulating there. Now, further south, the rain of this morning is going to continue to clear the very southern coastline of England, and behind that is going to be beautifully bright for much of Britain and Ireland. Out to the west of Ireland, a touch greyer, we're going to have more more rain spreading inland overnight. And generally speaking, it's going to be a very chilly night. We're going to have a widespread penetrating frost, temperatures well below freezing for most areas first thing on Saturday morning. However, it is mostly dry away from the far north of Scotland and the west of Ireland. Rain into the west of Ireland, clouds spreading ahead of that. Northern Ireland should remain pretty bright, but rather cold. Cold right across England, Wales and up into Scotland, where we're going to see further snow showers.
Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.